Hi everyone, my name is Jessie, and today I'll be discussing one of the world's most complex and emotionally charged intercultural conflicts, the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. But rather than focusing solely on the political or military aspects, we'll explore it using dialectical perspective, a communication framework that helps us examine opposing truths simultaneously and understand the deep cultural tensions at play. This conflict isn't just about land or religion. It's a clash of identities, histories, values, and traumas. It has lasted for over 75 years, affecting millions of lives, shaping global politics, and influencing how people understand culture, justice, and belonging. So, what really happens when two cultural groups both claim the same land, both feel historically wrong, and both carry collective trauma? That's where the dialectical perspective becomes a powerful tool for intercultural insight. So, if we start by examining the cultural identities and values of each side, for many Jewish Israelis, their identity is shaped by centuries of persecution culminating in the Holocaust. As a result, they deeply value security, autonomy, and survival. The land of Israel is seen as a safe haven and a biblical homeland, part of both a religious and national identity, according to Peleg and Waxman. On the other hand, Palestinian Arabs, who are predominantly Muslim and Christian, also strongly identify with the land. They view themselves as indigenous people who were displaced during the 1948 Nakba or catastrophe, and again during the 1967 war. Their values center on resistance, dignity, family, and cultural survival, said 1979. What we see here is the similarity difference dialectic, but both groups value land, memory, and identity, but their historical experience give those values very different meanings. This conflict is deeply shaped by the history/present dialectic. Jewish Israelis trace their claim to the land back thousands of years, but they also point to modern legal and political movements like Zionism and the United Nations Partition Plan in 1947. Palestinians, meanwhile, highlight their continuous presence on the land for generations and their forced displacement after the creation of the Israeli state. Here we see competing historical narratives, both valid but fundamentally incompatible in how they frame victimhood, belonging, and justice, according to Martin and Nakayama. The privilege-disadvantage dialectic is also important. Within Israeli Jewish citizens have full civil rights, access to government services, and protection under law. Palestinians living in the occupied West Bank and Gaza, however, often face movement restrictions, home demolitions, and lack of legal protections under military law. At the same time, Israeli civilians live under threat of rocket fire and violence from militant groups, leading to fear and trauma on both sides. This dialectic reminds us that privilege and disadvantage can exist at the same time and can shift depending on the context. There's a common belief that this conflict will never change, that it's ancient and eternal, but that's a static, dynamic dialectic in action. Yes, the conflict does have deep roots, but it's also evolving. As an example, the Abraham Accords showed shifting alliances between Israel and Arab countries. Grassroots peace groups like Parents Circle bring together Israeli and Palestinian families who've lost loved ones to foster understanding through storytelling and shared grief. These movements show that while identities may feel fixed, they are capable of transformation through dialogue. Communication between Israelis and Palestinians is not just politically difficult, it's culturally difficult. There are language barriers, but more importantly, there are barriers of trust, trauma, and historical memory. Each side often sees the other not as human, but as an existential threat. This is where intercultural communication becomes crucial. True peace will require listening not just to political demands, but to the pain and humanity of the other side. To conclude the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, it is not black and white. It is filled with contradiction, complexity, and truth on both sides. By using the dialectical perspective, we can avoid oversimplifying the conflict. We can acknowledge that both sides have experienced trauma, both value land, identity, and safety, and both must be heard for healing to begin.